everyone, and welcome back to episode 8 of Entr'acte with Julia. I'm Julia Choi, a violinist with the MET Orchestra, and you'll get to hear my talented colleagues speak about their lives. Our guest today is Chelsea Knox, who is one of the principal flutists of the MET Orchestra. Chelsea joined the orchestra 3 years ago in 2017. There are so many new things that I learned about Chelsea through this interview. She has had quite the professional past. Chelsea is an artist in both music and in visual art, and her work has been displayed in various galleries throughout New York City and in Connecticut. She studied at Juilliard, and prior to her appointment at the Met, she appeared with numerous orchestras, including the Seattle, Vancouver, San Diego, Princeton, New Haven, and Baltimore Symphonies. I am so excited to share my conversation with Chelsea today. Without further ado, let's meet Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so happy I got to speak with you today. So we overlapped in school, but very briefly, and you were a couple of years ahead of me, so we didn't really get to meet until recently at the Met, but I still remember listening to you play your solos in the orchestra and just being mesmerized, and I'm so happy that we get to be in the same orchestra now. So you've had quite the professional past and a super interesting journey, and not solely as a flutist, so I can't wait to hear about all of that in detail and to share with everyone else so they can get to know you too. But let's get a brief summary of your background and upbringing to begin. Where were you born and raised, and where have you lived, and what do your parents do? Are they musicians? How did you get started on the flute? And do you have siblings?
I'm originally from Litchfield, Connecticut, up in the northwest corner. I started flute in 4th grade. My family is not musical. My mom owns a picture framing business. My dad owned a lawn maintenance business. My mom's also a painter. But in 4th grade, we got to pick out which band instruments we wanted to play. And I really wanted to play trombone, but my parents into the flute, smaller case, easier to carry around. And I'm glad they helped me make that decision because
Yeah,
I love
that's so funny. It was trombone. That was your first choice. Do you have,
Yeah,
I mean, why was that? Just because it was
I-
like the loudest
it's
instrument?
wide. It's really cool.
Oh!
I
Yeah.
actually did end up learning how to play trombone a little in high school. I
Mm.
helped some of my friends learn and practice by it, very remedial trombone. So I finally did get to scratch the itch of learning the trombone, but
Wow, so you can play. That's exciting. That's so cool. And your mom was a painter, right? So would you say that her being an artist influenced you to become an artist and musician as well?
Definitely. She has this amazing outlook on art. Everything has a beautiful part to it. And I think even though she didn't always have the knowledge of music, she was able to listen to something and say, like, these are the spots that I found really beautiful. And I think really that translates in any art form. It's not so much being like a perfectly knowledgeable person about music or art or any other art form. It's more about what you take away from the experience. And so that approaching art that way has always really been a positive way for me to look at art.
Wow. And you actually do some painting yourself too. And we'll get into that later, but that's really awesome. I was just in Litchfield actually visiting a friend, and I was also in Danbury in Connecticut and in Ridgefield teaching at CIMF, and it seemed to me that the arts are really flourishing and thriving there. And to me it sounded like music is an integral part of the education from the very young stages. So would you say that this is true? And did you partake in any youth orchestras and stuff like that when you were growing up in Connecticut?
Yeah, I think the arts are a really strong focus in Connecticut. It's so awesome that you were just up there, and the fall foliage right now is perfect.
It's
So
so
there,
beautiful. Yeah. I mean, anywhere you go, I mean, I think Connecticut is the most beautiful in the fall, for sure.
it's really pretty there in the fall. Yeah, I started out my church choir growing up, we had these like Irish shindigs every Christmas Eve. So I started out playing penny whistle and singing in the choir at church. And then I started singing in a professional children's choir that in the town over when I was in middle school. That was called Chorus Angelicus. And that was a really strong musical foundation, even before I was very serious about flute, the ear training and the theory and the ensemble listening that we got from that group was great. And then when I was in high school, I started playing flute more seriously. There are some awesome youth orchestras in Hartford through the Hart School. And so I took lessons there with Greg Shearer, and I went a couple times a week for chamber music and orchestra. So that was really wonderful.
Wow, that's awesome. I actually did a lot of playing at church also when I was growing up, and it was at 7 a.m. so it was not ideal in timing, but I think there's a lot to be said about, all the jobs that aren't actually your job, but you grow up with all these outside things, and it builds you to be who you are today. And where did you go for college? I know this already, but
yeah, we went to Juilliard together. Yay,
yeah.
Juilliard. I started in 2006. I finished my undergrad in 2010 and master's in 2012, all studying with Jeff Kaner, who's principal in Philadelphia.
He's great. Yeah.
In high school, I studied with Greg Shearer, who's principal of Hartford Symphony, and I feel lucky because they're just the best teachers that I could have asked for. They're still people I talk to and respect, and yeah, nothing but good things to say about both of them.
Right.
But some of my studio mates all have awesome jobs, and
For sure.
there's so much talent in his studio while we were in school. It was always a really nice environment. Everybody was really supportive, and I'm still close with a lot of the flute players I went to school with.
That's great. Yeah. How would you describe your time at Juilliard, and did you love it there? And what were your main takeaways from, and some of the most important things that you learned from being a student there?
I did love being at Juilliard. I thought it was great. I think the coolest thing about Juilliard for me was the combination of the arts there, the collaboration between the dance and the actors and the musicians. I lived with dancers, the same dancer for all of my undergrad, Katie, and for my master's, I lived with another dancer named Melissa. And I loved working with them. We would do collaborative projects. I did some things with other dancers. My freshman year, I think I played guitar in every hall in Juilliard before I played flute because I was playing just kind of like folksy stuff for the dancers, and we had a lot of fun. Just, I don't know, they have such an open mind to all sorts of different music, and that was really a cool experience for me to get to work with them and see what they liked, see what worked for them. And for movement, that's something that I think the Juilliard experience is really special.
Yeah, it's not just a conservatory, so you have all the different arts happening at the same time around you, and it's so nice to have all these different things. Even the drama division. It was so cool to go to in the theater. And did you do any freelancing during your time at school? Like recording sessions, chamber music?
A little bit, but not actually that much like scattered freelancing. I had a touring trio during my master's called ETA3, and we were on the road a couple months out of the year. So I actually didn't really feel like I was around much during my master's, which is probably why we didn't get to know each other better while we were in school together. I just felt like I was never there. I would like show up and just play an orchestra, and then I'd be like on a plane again, going to some small town chamber program somewhere in the country.
Oh my goodness, that's so cool.
It was a lot of fun. We had a really fun group. It was flute, clarinet, and piano. We got along really well, and it was a fun time. But the traveling is exhausting. So
yeah, I bet. Oh my goodness.
A stable place now.
Where did you go when you were on tour?
Oh man, I mean only the U.S., but it was lots and lots of smaller towns actually. Chamber music programs at universities or small town chamber music programs. I mean, there's so much music thriving in communities all across the country. It was cool to meet the people everywhere because I don't know, when you live in New York, you see the audience in New York, you think New York is an arts capital, but there are really thriving art scenes everywhere you go.
That's really awesome. And then what did you do after you graduated?
So I was a little lost at the end of my master's at Juilliard. I'd taken a couple auditions and they didn't go so well. I just felt really nervous. My preparation for the auditions was really focused on perfection, and I kind of burned myself out just
Mm-hmm.
feeling that pressure for perfection and then not doing well a couple times. I felt discouraged. So I saw this ad in the union paper to play the ocarina, which
That's so cool.
it's this little clay instrument. I didn't know at the time. It's very famous from Zelda, the
Mm-hmm.
video game, which is not something I played growing up. So I didn't know that the ocarina is mostly known for this. So when I took the job, I ended up spending most of my time at comic conventions. There are a
Wow.
few videos out there where I have fake ears.
I've seen
It's a
them. They're
whole
so cool.
it's a whole different experience than what we're trained for at Juilliard. And
Yeah, but
yeah,
just going back to, being at Juilliard, just having all the different arts and probably from your past experiences collaborating with the dancers and all that gave way to what you did with the ocarina because you have to act too, right? In order
yeah,
for
which I'm not very good at. I kind of wish that I had taken some more notes from my actor and dancer friends while I was at Juilliard. It was not something I felt very comfortable doing, and I would go to these comic conventions, and I had my Zelda cosplay, and I would dress up, and people would come up and request all the Zelda songs and be just like totally blown away when I could just on command play
yeah.
any of them. But I think when people look at opera, they're like, oh, don't you get tired of playing Bohème hundreds of times? I'm like, I've played those Zelda songs thousands of times in a very short amount of time. So I will never take for granted that playing and at the Met is just the best job
Yeah,
ever.
it is. And hopefully we could get back to it soon. I really miss playing. That's so cool though, the ocarina. So is it different playing? I mean, could you describe the instrument a little bit? And is it
It's
similar
kind of
to flute?
Yeah, in the sense that it's a wind instrument, it's similar. It's kind of like a whistle with holes in it. So you don't
Okay.
really have to do a whole lot. You just have to blow into it and move your fingers. So in that sense, it's a little easier than the flute. Almost anyone can pick up the ocarina and make a sound instantly.
Oh. And then
It's
how
kind
many holes are there?
of,
Never mind.
I don't actually know. I'd have to look at one.
Okay.
You can buy them in a bunch of different sizes, though. There are some that you only use these fingers, some that you use all your fingers, kind of like a flute, and then they make some that actually have like multiple chambers, so you slide between. One interesting
Wow.
thing from a kind of nerdy woodwind perspective about the ocarina is that it has no overtone series. So you can't blow harder and it plays an octave higher like the recorder. Like, have you ever handed a small child a recorder and the first thing they do is blow as loud as possible in your
Yeah.
eardrum? No, the ocarina doesn't have that. Like, if you blow on it, it kind of just sounds like an angry owl. So it actually makes a pretty good instrument for young students
For
because
young
it's
students,
not so
yeah.
loud and shrill.
That's so awesome. And how long were you there playing ocarina in St. Louis? It was in St. Louis, right?
Yeah, it was in St. Louis. I was there for about 5 months and then I moved back to New York. But in that time, a lot of my freelance work had dried up in the city. Things move so fast in New York and you can get replaced pretty easily.
Yeah, in New York, I mean, the freelance career is a whole different thing where you just have to be there and say yes to, as many things as you can, or they move on to the next person. Yeah.
Right. So 5 months was a long enough time being away that the next couple people have filled my
Right.
spot with a few things that I was doing kind of regularly, and I wasn't making enough money to afford rent. At the time, I was so lucky though. I had one of my studio mates from school at an apartment that he sublet to me for way less than he should have. It was really like a life-saving moment, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
eternally grateful to him for that. And during that time, I was trying to scrap together a freelance career, but it was not paying enough. So I got a full-time job. I was working at a picture framing shop in Chelsea, Chelsea Frame, 23rd Street. My business card said Chelsea like 8 times. People thought I was the owner because of my name.
That's so funny. That's so cool though. And what kind of stuff would you do there?
I was on the design team, so I was working in the front of the store. People would bring in their art, and I would help them pick out matting and frames, which I loved. I loved seeing all the different art that people brought in, or seeing basically like what is important to people. Like if you're spending the money to get something custom framed, it's usually something that means a lot to you. So it was always a really fun process to work
Wow.
with people designing.
That's so cool. Do you do some of that right now?
I don't. I mean, picture framing might be something I'll look into getting a job with if the Met stays out of work for much longer. But it's really my only other marketable skill. So I guess I'm glad to have at least one specialty skill besides music. I appreciate when I go to museums and stuff looking at all the frames, though. I think framing is actually its own art form. And when I was working at the picture framing shop, it was also a gallery space. The basement was a gallery called Gallery Protege, and we had a staff art show there, and all of my colleagues who worked there were real artists, like went to art school, make incredible art, and it was a really cool opportunity for me to get to show my art. At the time I was doing a lot of pen and ink drawings, so I was able to show those, and I sold all of mine, which was really exciting to be
That's
up.
awesome.
Yeah,
My
thanks.
goodness. Yeah.
So it was cool to be part of that and to be part of a community of real artists.
Yeah. And you still paint now, right? I've seen some of your
Yeah,
work and it's so beautiful. Is it
thanks.
mostly oil? I mean, do you have one genre?
Yeah, I right now I've been working on an oil series. Now that I have a little bit more space to baby proof off a corner, I have the room to let them dry. Back in my old apartment, there wasn't any extra space for oil paintings to dry. Um, and so what I'm working on now is this floral series. They're piped with cake frosting tools, and the goal is for it to look kind of like a wall garden, if you've ever seen those vertical planters.
Yeah.
Uh, Originally, I made one a few years ago. It's above my bed. Kind of see it over there.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, I've seen pictures of it on Instagram.
It's really large, 24 by 54, and it took months to make and then another year to dry. Question mark.
What? Oh my goodness.
The
That's
process is really messy and really time intensive because of the drying periods, but it's a lot of fun to make, and I love working with color and texture, so it's
wow.
really rewarding for me.
So this is probably the perfect time to do all of that. And to let it dry is one thing. So,
Yeah, we have a
wow.
dehumidifier right next to them, hoping that will speed up the process a little bit.
um, would you say that all of these other jobs and experiences influenced you in the way you play the flute today?
Definitely. I feel like it's a good dose of perspective to have some non-music jobs. While I was in school during the summers, I always had to work. I never did festivals really because I had odd jobs. I worked at Rockefeller Center, at J. Crew in Rockefeller Center, and I worked
Ooh.
at like a vegetable stand in Connecticut one summer. All of these things I think help you appreciate how special being a full-time musician is, and it's something I never take for granted because
Right.
it's really just the best job. I love it so much.
Yeah, even more now because, we're kind of deprived from it. And it's been a humbling experience for sure because I don't know, I feel like we just lost a lot of our identities during this time of being able to provide people with music. So it's been challenging, but we're kind of finding our ways to get back out there. So I agree with what you said about appreciating your art and appreciating the job. Yeah.
I don't think anyone will take music for granted, from either side, audience or performer, after this experience with the pandemic. I think we all really value the power that music has to bring joy and comfort during these times. And I think when we finally do get back, there will be a really special energy. I'm looking forward to that when
Me too.
everyone's so happy to play again.
Yeah, it'll be a really even more exciting time. And the Met wasn't your first orchestral job, right? You won several and have been with other orchestras previously. So can you elaborate on your experiences in these different places?
Yeah, so while I was working at that picture framing shop, I had the opportunity to audition for a few orchestras that spring. So that would be a year after I graduated from my master's.
Wow.
Detour to Ocarina Land and picture framing. There were the same month there were openings for Princeton Symphony Principal, New York City Ballet Section, and New Haven Symphony Principal. And Princeton, I was fortunate. I won that one. It was my first audition win, and it was a really big boost, especially because I had been working full time and practicing for just like an hour every night. It was such a different practice routine than I had had in college, where I was practicing almost all day, every day. Suddenly, I only had a very limited amount of time to get all the work I needed to get done, and it made me prioritize what I cared about more. And my whole perspective changed from this perfection attitude to why do I love these excerpts and why do I want to be playing them. And I think, like we talked about earlier, that detour doing other jobs helped me focus in on why I love playing music instead of why I needed to be perfect or else.
Right. Yeah, that definitely plays a lot into it, and I think time management becomes a thing when you're pressed for time, and when you're pressed for time, you realize what you need to work on here and there, and it's a lot more effective and efficient that way, the practicing, at least for me. So I had a similar experience also. Yeah, so you were in Princeton and New Haven.
Yeah. So the later in the month, New York City Ballet held an audition, and I was runner up for that. And that audition ended at like 7 p.m. And I went back to Brooklyn and I slept. And then the New Haven audition was the next morning. I got on the train at 6 a.m. and I forgot my music and I showed up and I was just spent. I had like not an ounce of adrenaline left in my body. And because of that, my attitude at the audition was just actually kind of more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to kind of let go and have a little bit more fun because I was just so exhausted.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a really like when audition taking is just like your daily attitude when you're like, oh, I did this yesterday, I'll do this again today. The pressure kind of comes down. It's almost like your job at that point. Like,
That's
this is
true.
how I play on a normal day because I just can't maintain that level of nervous anxiety for day after day. So that was a really eye-opening experience for me, to be able to win with that attitude. It helped me going forward learn how to approach an audition.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes when you're not expecting something, or you take the pressure off of you, then sometimes it works out for the better. That I find this. That's really awesome. And then you were also in Baltimore, right?
Yeah, I won the audition for Baltimore a few years later after 2 trial weeks. So it was
Wow.
kind of a long audition process. I think I got the trial week at the audition in October or November, and then I had one trial week in April and another one in May, and
Wow.
then I moved down the following fall. So it was like a year of waiting, like, will
Right,
this
right.
happen? Will it not happen?
That happens with a lot of orchestras. I think, you win the actual audition, but then you have trials coming up and trial weeks coming up months later, and you're just waiting.
Definitely. I think trial weeks are the hardest form of auditioning out of any. I've had one for Seattle too, and sometimes you feel like you're in this really hard place where you're trying to please all these potential new colleagues, and sometimes the music director's asking you for something different, and you're trying to be just like really happy and excited to be there. And for me, I had a hard time not losing my musical sensibilities in the process because I was so worried about people pleasing that it was sometimes hard to focus on making the music my
Right.
priorities.
Yeah.
Trial weeks are hard for anybody
They
going through
really
them.
are. Oh my goodness. Yeah, because you're trying to please everybody, but at the same time, you want to try to stay true to yourself too, and, play the way you want it to be. But I think in the end, you find the orchestra that you're supposed to be in when you don't feel like you have to please everybody because, they're accepting of the way you are and the way you're playing. And then, it just works out for both parties that way. So, yeah.
Definitely.
So your audition journey wasn't like rainbows all the time.
No,
Right.
definitely. I think I've taken, I don't know, maybe about 20 auditions. I never really kept track because that felt like a depressing thing to do. But, won some, lost some, totally tanked
Yeah.
some. It was weird too. Like you never know what different committees are looking for. I think now having been on both sides, you know, you just have to play true to yourself and hope, like you said, that you're the right fit for a group. You don't want to have to change yourself totally to fit in with the section. You want to be accepted for how you play.
Mm-hmm. And what do you look for when you're on the other side, when you're on the panel?
I think I look for, well, an audition is just an interview where you have to convince everyone with your instrument instead of your words. I look for someone who would be fun to sit next to, someone who has inspiring musical ideas, but who also sounds calm and confident. Um, you really want that kind of energy in your section. And it's pretty apparent behind a screen who has the energy that will fit in well.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I've never really been on the other side of a screen. I've, judged competitions, but it's not really the same thing. So that's really cool that it's so obvious most of the time. It seems like from everyone else I've talked to, they say that it's pretty obvious when someone wins. So let's say a new person joins your section at the Met, and there's a chance that that person will be super green and has not had much orchestral experience. What are some of the things that you look for, and are there certain types maybe that a student wouldn't know? And what are some of the things that would make up your ideal section mate?
Those are all really good questions. I think that one of the things that new people in sections have to remember is that they deserve to be there. I know I struggled a little bit with that imposter syndrome idea when I first got to the Met. Like, here I was sitting amidst people who I had so much respect for. I was like, they must have made a mistake. Like, they must have meant to hire someone else, not me. And I think that that can be a common problem when people join new groups of people they really respect. That you can be really hard on yourself because you're like, these are my idols. Like, these are
Mm-hmm.
people who I look up to, and they must be thinking that everything I'm doing is such a mess. And I think what I'm doing is a mess. I think changing that mindset so that you're like, I deserve to be here. I'm prepared. I'm excited about the music. Those are really the important things. I think a new person, and this is something that I love so much about you. When you came into the
Oh,
Met, you has just such a great attitude, and that is really the most important thing in a new group.
thank you. I could say exactly the same thing about you. You have such positive energy, and you know, I really look forward to speaking with you every time.
I think it goes a long way. I think, playing is only half of being on a team, and being in an orchestra is really being a team player.
Attitude has a lot to do with it too, and just the makeup of your personality. So, and can we talk about your Met audition for a little bit? How was your experience with the audition? Do you remember your day, the audition day, and just everything that happened? It was so vivid for me. Just the whole day was. I can really just remember everything that happened. So I'm curious about how yours was.
Yeah, I do also remember it really vividly. Uh, the week before my audition, there had been a HD broadcast of Rosencavalier, and so I had gone and watched that in the movie theater in Baltimore, and I was just so excited and inspired. I mean, Rosencavalier is just the best. So after having seen that, I was like, I want this audition. I really, really want to play with this group of musicians. Like, this is as good as it gets for me. So the morning of my audition, I sat in the plaza, which feels like home after going to Juilliard. Sitting by the fountain it's kind of comforting. And I listened to the trio from Rosencavalier 3 times through, I think, until I felt kind of calm and excited. I was like ready to play. I felt like Rosencavalier was on my audition list, so I was excited to go in there and play it, and everything else on the list. And that attitude, I think, carried me through the day pretty well, because I felt just like a racehorse, kind of like, I can't wait to do this. I just love these excerpts. I love the opera repertoire. I really want to just get out there, and I've practiced it so hard. My first round went pretty well. My second round, the final round, I kind of flubbed the very last excerpt of the day, and I think I started it again, and I felt just like, wow, after all of this, I messed it up, and I'm so like that. I'm so close, and that's it. I'm done. And I got off stage, and I was just like, and I went up to the room where everybody was waiting, and I was like, and Bob came in, and he was like, "You won!" And I think I swore. I was just totally blindsided. I thought that it had gone terribly. And
well, sometimes like one flubbed excerpt, it changes our whole mindset, and we're just like, oh man, we could have done better. But the panel doesn't really look at that one flub that we had.
It's so true. Being on the other side, like, I definitely don't hold a flub against anyone. Like, we're all human. I don't expect any of my colleagues to be perfect all the time, and I hope that they don't expect that of me, because I certainly make plenty of mistakes. That mistakes happen, and I think as long as you still stay true to your musical ideas and keep that as what the committee is focused on, they'll forget a mistake pretty quickly.
For sure. Did you and Seth win at the same time?
Yeah, we both started the same year, and Seth is the best co-principal ever. I hope he watches this.
I'll make sure he knows.
I feel really lucky to work with Seth. I just wish that we got to play together more, because we never overlap.
Oh, yeah. That's true. I mean, because you're both principals, so when one person is off, the other person plays. So, which is great when you were pregnant, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to the whole section for being there for me during my pregnancy. I had one rough weekend in December, right around the start of my third trimester. I fainted and ended up in the emergency room. And
what? When did that happen? Was that during Rosencavalier or during Bozek?
Yes, both of those. It was a double day with Bozek and Rosencavalier, and Marone stepped in to play principal on like an hour's notice for both of those. Evgeny came in and played second on both of those. Seth covered me on magic flute that weekend.
Oh my God.
It was one of those moments where I was so grateful to everybody. I don't think any other section in the world could
it was do it right on the spot.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I remember Marone playing principal on something, and I was like, what happened there? But I didn't realize that you had fainted. That's crazy.
There's this sugar test that you have to take right at the beginning of your third trimester, and I just had a really bad reaction to it and passed out at the testing site. It was luckily just a block from the hospital, so they just pushed me over, and nothing was wrong. They just had to keep me and monitor me for a long time because I had fallen, and they didn't know if I had hit my stomach because I passed out and I didn't have anybody with me.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad everything worked out okay, and that you're okay. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so the flute section at the Met is just the best.
Yeah, I'm so glad you won the audition.
Me too.
Yeah. And so do you teach, and are you taking new students right now?
I don't really teach much. I don't have any students right now. I would definitely take on some students over Zoom, but during the season, you know how it is. The first couple years at the Met, you're learning so much new repertoire. You have so many services. It's about as much as you can handle just to learn the music or take a nap services. It's an exhausting
Right.
job. So many operas that, yeah, teaching just wasn't something I had a lot of time for. But I do coach at the Verbier Festival in Switzerland. So that's sort of like teaching. We lead the woodwind sectionals.
I totally agree, because I had a bunch of students before I joined the Met, and I just gave them all away before I joined, because I mean, I didn't know what to expect with the schedule, and I do know that it's crazy. It's a really crazy schedule, and especially to be learning all these operas for the first time. And one opera is like, for us, 60 pages at least. It's a lot of notes. So it's one thing to learn just the notes on the page, and then you have to go back and listen to it, and make sure you're playing everything in the right mood and the character and all of that, and you have to know what's going on. So it takes a lot out of you, and I heard that after 8 years you feel okay. So
We have nowhere to go.
yeah, right. I wouldn't trade it up for anything. So
Yeah, I think the way the schedule is structured at the Met too, with 7 shows a week, it's not like playing a regular orchestra job where you expect to be playing, Friday, Saturday, Sunday maybe, and then Monday afternoons you'll always have free to teach, or Tuesday evenings, or whatever. At the Met, some weeks you're playing almost every night, some weeks you're playing just on the weekend. It's just a really unpredictable schedule week to week. To have any sort of regular studio, it takes a lot of work to make that all happen. So while you're learning the new operas, it's easier just to not deal with
right.
that extra complication.
For sure. And yeah, it's just hard to have something regular in the schedule, because you just don't know, some of your coworkers might need you that day unexpectedly. So you just don't know. And you just gave birth to Adderley, who is your baby boy. And the pandemic is definitely a bummer, but it's nice that you have this time to spend together in the very beginning stages of motherhood. And so, how's it been going? He's so cute.
Thanks. It's been going well. We really love him. And, I guess this is how parental leave looks in Scandinavian countries. Both parents get like a year off. And
A year?
yeah,
Wow.
I think in some places, and it's really amazing to have both me and my husband, Eric, here with him, because babies are really time consuming. They need a lot of attention. Um, I can
For
only
sure.
imagine what that would be like to do by myself, or to do while doing the full job, because we've been off for so long now. But it has been nice to have that undivided time to really spend getting to know this small human.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, it seems like it's possible though, because
Yeah.
other people
Oh,
have done it, and there are a lot of moms in the orchestra.
there are super moms in the orchestra. Like, I have so much respect for all of the mothers in the group, and there are a lot of them, and it's a really supportive environment to actually have been pregnant and to now have a baby. I feel like my coworkers have all been so supportive of
Right.
me and my family, which I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, and I've been asking a lot of the moms, how they do all of this, and but you're the first recent mother that I get to interview. So, how are you feeling about, entering motherhood with your huge career?
I mean, right now it feels a little surreal, to be honest, because there is no performing. It's like what you said earlier about that loss of identity. It's a little bit like right now I'm just a stay-at-home mom, which is a hard job as it is. I have a whole new understanding of what that means. But I do really miss performing, and I miss having that counterbalance in life, because I love music so much. But without having any immediate need to perform, it can get hard to place practicing above Adderley, which is such an immediate need. Like, babies are always needing you. So,
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple hours a day while he's napping to either clean, paint, practice, shower.
Yeah.
uh, so sometimes it can be a little challenging just to prioritize music. But we love playing for him and playing him. opera recordings. We were listening to
Oh,
his Magic Flute yesterday, and it was really cute. He was
yeah.
watching the overture, and I feel like he knows everybody, but hasn't met that many people yet.
Oh, that's so cute. And do you think he'll play an instrument? I mean, you don't know, obviously, but he
No,
definitely
he
will.
already plays the piano. I mean,
What?
he's not piano. We're starting him young. Both me and Eric love just having music be like part of our household. So every morning, we have classical music on. He's been listening to a lot of string quartets lately.
Oh.
Eric has a lot of these little mini keyboards for synthesizer control. And he loves banging away on those. He's got a little xylophone. He loves strumming the guitar. So I think he'll play an instrument, whether I hope that it's just not something he even thinks about. It's like music is just something that's done in our family.
That's so awesome. Starting him really young, right away. Yeah, it's so cool. And how did you meet Eric?
We met at Iris Orchestra down in Memphis. It's Michael Stern, who's music director in Kansas City, kind of like his pet project where everybody flies in from around the country, and it's like a music festival for a weekend. It's a lot of fun, really talented players from all over. And I met Eric because I was sitting behind him warming up on piccolo really obnoxiously. He turned around and gave me a really dirty look, and it was love at first sight.
Wow, that's so funny. And do you still play and perform together now?
Yeah. Yeah, we during normal times we do a few chamber concerts a year usually, and during the pandemic we've done some education things together. It's always a lot of fun playing together. We actually kind of bicker a lot when we play together.
Yeah.
We don't have to like shield any of our ideas. So it always ends up being a really good learning experience, and we have a fun creative process because of that when we write our own music together or when we work on things that he's written and that we arrange.
I have a similar experience with my sister. I mean, in terms of not filtering anything when you play together. I mean, it's just like very direct. So, in a way, it's really good, and it's a faster learning curve sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's so great that you have someone to make music with right now. In these could be lonely times. So
Yeah, I mean, having a live-in chamber partner is as much as you can hope. I've been learning Baroque flute during the pandemic, and
oh wow.
he tunes down his piano. He has an electric keyboard that he can move down a half step because the Baroque flute's tuned at 415, and he puts on the harpsichord mode and he practices realizing his figured bass while I practice my Baroque flute very
That's so
simply.
awesome. Oh my goodness. And what else have you been doing during the pandemic?
Yeah, a lot of Baroque flute, a lot of Irish flute, which is something I really like to do, but during the season I don't usually have a lot of time. Adderley really likes listening to that, and Adderley takes up most of our time, but we like to go hiking, get outside as much as possible, and I've been baking a good amount.
Oh my
I don't
god, you're the best baker ever.
bake.
I
I
remember
love
you brought
baking.
in some baked goods time to time for work, and I would just eat so many of them.
Good.
They're
Good. I think
so good.
it's good that they get eaten up at work, because if they stay home, that's the problem with the pandemic. If they just sit in my kitchen, I will eat them all. And I don't need that right now. But we've been through a lot of sticks of butter in the last 7 months. I
Wow.
should have kept count. It's maybe a disgusting amount of butter.
No, I love your baking so much. You're the bestest baker. So I wonder, do you bake when you're stressed or just anytime?
Yeah, I think anytime, but particularly when I'm stressed, it's always a good release to do something that's just
Yeah.
totally different from music or anything else. And yeah, I think having them to bring into work is always a good goal, because then I'm like, oh, I'll just it's something good I can do. Like no
Yeah.
matter what, I'm even if the show goes bad tonight, at least I brought.
Right. What's your favorite baked good to make?
That's hard. I love to make bread. I think I'm the only person who didn't start making sourdough during the pandemic, but I've made it a lot before, and unless you're making it often, I find that it's just kind of hard to keep up. So I love making like crusty breads though, that you can kind of get that sourdough flavor if you just use a very little amount of yeast and do a longer ferment. So that's my favorite, to work with
Wow.
dough.
Okay. Well, can't wait to see all your baked goods on, Instagram. And painting too, right?
Right, and painting.
Lots
Yeah,
of painting.
I've been doing a lot more painting now that we have the time. And so that's been a really good creative outlet, because right now music isn't such a possible creative outlet. It feels
Mm-hmm.
good to still have something I can put myself out there on.
What's your Instagram handle for your painting?
I just started a new Instagram for my paintings. It's at Piping Painter, kind of a play on fluting, piping,
Yeah, such an
painting, and also
awesome.
because the paintings are piped with frosting tools. So,
Yeah, that's the perfect name, and I've checked it out, and it's so beautiful already. Um, yeah, and you've been at the Met for 3 years now, right? So you must have your fair share of either hilarious or crazy stories at the Met.
one funny story I can think of in the pit was during Pagliacci a few years ago. One of the clarinetists got their swab stuck in the instrument, and I remember it being kind of just like a comedy of errors, but also like this teamwork sense that you don't see on stage because everybody's still working to look professional. But it was like people running in and out of the pit. They got like another clarinet and it didn't work, and they got another clarinet, it was the wrong key. And then Elaine pulled out these like, they're like dental tools. I don't even like, they're long, and she's like reaching back there trying to pull the swab out with these giant pinchers, and I'm just sitting there like, does anyone in the audience see any of this? And it all worked out, and teamwork saved the day. And I'm sure like it felt like the worst thing in the world to the people involved, but from a bystander's perspective, I was just like, this is just going
This is so
on.
cool. Yeah.
Nobody even notices.
Wow. And when was this? Was this your first year?
Yeah, I was still pretty new, so I was still getting used to playing in the pit and what that whole experience is like. But the pit there's like a different sense of teamwork than in a stage orchestra, where I think you're always worried about how you're being perceived because the lights are on. In the pit, it's definitely more of a sense of like, we're all in this together.
Yeah, for sure. The spotlight isn't on you, the spotlight isn't on you as an orchestral player. It's just more of like this teamwork kind of thing. I basically just said exactly what you just said.
No, it's
But I totally agree. That's pretty crazy. I mean, being able to get away with, you know, doing all of that during a show. It was during the opera, right?
yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's great. So this question is so difficult to answer, but what's your favorite opera to play? Or maybe it's not. And what's your favorite opera in general? And when you're listening out in the audience, maybe they're three different things.
It is a hard question. I feel like every time I get asked this question, I answer differently. So today I've been thinking a lot about Critico lately. I love Critico, which maybe is cheating because it's three operas, but they're the three operas together. So I'm gonna go with that. I feel like I love Puccini. I love the colors and the textures that he gets, and those three operas I think are such a good sampling of Puccini. And Sir Angelica is just like, oh, like everybody leaves crying. It's
Mm-hmm.
perfect tragic opera, I think, and then the music is just so heartbreaking. So I think that's up there as one of my favorites from an audience perspective. I love, again, Puccini. I love the Zeffirelli productions at the Met. I know that they're old favorites for a reason, but when that curtain opens up on Turandot, I'm always like, it's
Yeah, it's so
so cool.
beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are so many people up there. So it makes it so exciting because everything's changing all the time, and the sets are so breathtaking. It's,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, sometimes I look at that and I'm just like, how many people are there on the stage?
Yeah, one of the
It's
cool
pretty
things about working
incredible.
at the Met, I think, there's this, you're a part of such a large production. Like your individual role in it is really important, but the bigger picture is really, it's all of that energy, all of that effort is what makes grand opera so special.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree with that. I wish that you could see some of the stuff, when you're sitting where you are. But it's so hard because you're right in front of, right under the stage, right?
Yeah, yeah. For some productions, we can see a little bit, but like Magic Flute, we're kind of tucked way back. You can't see anything. So I was watching it with Adderley last night, and I hadn't seen it in person in years. I was like, is this what's going on stage?
Yeah,
Didn't even, this is what's happening during the flute solo? I
I
didn't even
know.
remember this.
Exactly. I mean, I get to watch a lot more of what's happening because I'm on the sidelines. Um, but yeah, it must be a different experience on your end to be able to like just focus completely on just the conductor and the orchestra. Yeah, depending on where you sit in the pit, it definitely makes a difference for sure.
Yeah, I imagine sitting where you sit, like that third wall must feel like an actual literal wall because the audience is like separated.
Right, yeah. I never even thought of that, but it does. It does feel like a wall.
It is a
Um,
literal wall.
and it could be a little more distracting to have the stage in your peripheral vision on the left side all the time, but it's also really cool. So, yeah, could go both ways. And what do you miss most about playing at the Met?
I think it's what we talked about, that teamwork, that energy you get from all of these collective people working together for the same goal in real time. There's something that I kind of miss with everything on the internet, that you just don't get that sense of danger that live performance has. Everybody's putting themselves on the line, and it's only going to happen for that hour or two, and then it's over. Like, I think that that's what makes live music, live performance, live opera so spellbinding, is that you're
Yeah.
just part of this world for a short period of time, and sometimes like absolute magic happens.
Yeah, it's so exciting, and it's just this electricity that you have, happening, and everyone's in it at the same time, and I think it's cool that you can't really recreate this same exact moment in art. So, and it's different from recorded performances, the stuff that we've been doing more so now during this pandemic, because it can't be curated in the same way. Um, yeah, I definitely miss a lot of the excitement and the spontaneity and electricity. And I've been asking this question to everybody on the podcast, and everyone has something different to say, but it always comes back to something having to do with electricity and, just being in the moment with all your teammates. So, yeah. And do you have any advice for young people who are just starting a career in music or on the audition circuit and just in general?
I think that my best advice for young musicians, or especially musicians during this time, is to remember why you love music, and to remember that loving music can look different at different points in your life, whether you're working a full-time non-music job or full-time in an orchestra. The way that you care about your art form doesn't always have to be practicing 8 hours a day. Sometimes it can be listening, sometimes it can be just thinking about music, sometimes it can be being an audience member. I think there's so many different ways to feel fulfilled in this industry, and right now we're at a point where almost nobody is out there performing. So instead of feeling discouraged, I think it's a good time to look into why you really care about music and what gets you excited.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with that again. It's really, really great advice. Thank you. Do you have any must listens for audience members that might change their lives forever?
I think for me, Dialogues of the Carmelites is an opera that changed my life. It's just so heart-rendingly tragic. I remember leaving the theater just hysterically crying. I had to sneak out because my mascara was everywhere. So I think that this is one that if you haven't heard it, definitely check it out.
And you just played that, right? Last season?
Yeah,
That was the one with Yannick, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Wow.
the noise that they use for the guillotine is so it just I think when you're there live, it's just like a really physical reaction that you get to it along with the Salve Regina. It's just like, oh, yeah.
I've never watched that one, so I have to go watch that too, and listen
Yeah.
to it. But I had a similar experience with Tosca when, they use an actual, do they use an actual gun?
Yeah.
Okay, because that sound just like triggered so many tears. While I was playing, it was just like a complete shock when I played it for the first time, subbing. And I was just like, what? And it
Yeah.
just, yeah, I mean, in opera, on stage, they're just reenacting things that happen in real life. So it really gets to you. It brings all the emotions out, and I that's what I love about playing opera. It's so dramatic, and yeah, it brings out all the emotions in you. So
Yeah.
okay, so now we got to the fun part. Rapid fire questions. Dogs or cats?
Both?
Both. Okay.
Is
Do
that
you
cheating?
have
Can I
any?
say? No,
Yeah,
we don't
I
have any
mean,
pets, but I like them both equally.
wine or cocktails?
Wine.
And what's your go-to drink?
Probably red wine. I like
Red
those like
wine over
full
white.
red. Yeah, red for sure.
Awesome. City or suburbs?
Suburbs?
Oh, okay. Do you like jazz or pop?
Jazz.
And mountains or oceans?
Mountains.
Coffee or green tea?
I'd say tea, but maybe like black tea.
Okay. Books or Netflix?
Books.
Summer or winter?
Winter.
Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Cooking or takeout?
Cooking.
Homebody or outdoors?
I think homebody.
Me too. I think I'm getting more homebody these days. I was definitely an outdoors person before, but I'm just getting used to adapting to the norm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Online shopping or in person?
In person, but right now, I don't know. No shopping.
Yeah. Introvert or extrovert?
I think introvert.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning person, which is not a great thing for being an opera musician.
Yeah. Text message or call?
Text message.
Favorite restaurant in New York City?
I think the pandemic kind of showed me that if I only go to one restaurant, it's the hummus place on 74th Street.
Oh, it's so good. I've been there.
Yeah, it's so cheap too. It's just like the best bargain for good food.
Yeah, and for something, it's healthy, right?
Yeah, it's all
healthy.
vegetarian, I think.
Yeah, so I like going there too. Hopefully it'll stay in business,
I hope so. That's been like my go-to lunch spot since college, so.
Yeah, I remember. And favorite coffee shop in New York City?
Well, it's not necessarily for their coffee, but I love the Housing Works Cafe down in Soho. I just
Never been there.
Oh, you should go. They have a lot of used records and used books, and it all supports a good cause. So their coffee, it's nice to just like look through the books, drink a coffee. It's a nice atmosphere.
Wow. So it's kind of just like a library, and you can sit there and have your coffee.
A spiral staircase and books on like all open. I think they do events there too, like podcasts and different sort of things. We'll do live events.
So cool. Wow.
Maybe your podcast someday.
I don't
live
know.
events happen again.
Thank you. Maybe. We'll see. And what's your favorite cuisine?
I love Korean food.
Ooh, that's so cool. Have you made any?
Yeah, I made kimbap the other day.
Oh my god, that's That's so cool.
I love Korean food. There's an H Mart near where I live now, and I'm so happy that I can go and get good Korean products.
Wow, okay. I just started this, my mom started this cooking channel, so we have some of the recipes on there if you're interested. I'll send it to
I will absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah. And where can people find you if they want to connect?
I'm on Instagram. My new painting account is public. It's at Piping Painter.
Awesome. And then you have a website too, right?
And yeah, I have a website too, chelseaknox.com.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Chelsea. This was awesome. I'm so happy we got to do this. And I learned so much about you that I didn't know prior to this. So I'm so excited to learn all of that. It's so cool what you do.
Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into the 8th episode of Entr'acte with Julia. I'm Julia Choi, and my guest today was Chelsea Knox, who is the principal flutist of the MET Orchestra. That's it for today. I hope you had a great time learning about Chelsea. If you want to learn more about her, you can connect with Chelsea on Instagram at Piping Painter or at her website, chelseaknox.com. If you have a chance, please rate and review, hit subscribe to keep up with new episodes, and pass it along to a friend. Thank you so much again for joining. I hope you'll come back for more. In the meantime, you can check out juliachoiviolinist.com/podcast.